Feeney returned home after leaving the military, only to find his house transformed into a pigsty. The old man feeding the pigs informed him that his mother had passed away from illness a year ago, and his brother had been hanged for assaulting a police officer. Feeney was shocked to hear this. Just then, a woman walked over. Upon seeing the woman, the old man turned around without a word and hurriedly fled. This woman was Feeney's sister-in-law. As it turned out, while Feeney was away, Fitzgibbon, together with Lord Kilmacle, forcibly demolished their house. Feeney's brother got into a conflict with the police while trying to protect the house and was sentenced to death by hanging by a judge. Their mother had nowhere to go and died of a plague infection in the wilderness. Fortunately, the sister-in-law later found an empty house and managed to survive there with her 3 children. The old man who fed the pigs was also Fitzgibbon's subordinate. Feeney, upon learning the truth, was filled with extreme anger, but he knew he couldn't confront these high-ranking officials. He took out the rations he carried with him and provided a hearty meal for his sister-in-law and her family. Then he pulled out a bag of gold coins and expressed his desire to take them to the United States. Upon hearing this, the sister-in-law immediately agreed. They had long endured enough of the freezing and hunger. The family quickly fell asleep, fantasizing about the new life that awaited them. Little did they know that misfortune was about to strike. The next day, Feeney bid farewell at his mother's grave and prepared to take his family to the United States. However, as soon as he reached his doorstep, he discovered a group of police officers surrounding their house. They wanted to arrest the people inside and demolish the roof. Feeney became anxious and tried to rush in to protect his family but was struck down by a police baton. He was then forcefully pressed into the ground. Helpless, the sister-in-law had no choice but to come out with the children. But at that moment, the hot-blooded nephew stabbed one of the policemen at the door. Soon after, he was shot dead in a hail of bullets. Feeney, unable to move, could only watch it all happen, his eyes filled with fury. Subsequently, Feeney was taken to the police station. The police chief, without asking for any reasons, immediately intended to throw Feeney into prison and was already planning to keep the weapons confiscated from Feeney for himself. In his eyes, ordinary people were worthless and insignificant. At this point, Feeney finally exploded. He kicked the knife into the commissioner's mouth, picked up the gun on the ground, and directly shot the police commissioner to death. At this time, police reinforcements arrived. Feeney used the police officer's body as a cover, and sidestepped a shot before picking up his own knife, and opened the madness of sadism. These police officers had been accomplices to tyranny for too long, and they never expected to meet such an end themselves. Soon, Feeney killed all the police officers in the station. He set the police station on fire and quickly returned home to prepare to escape to the United States with his sister-in-law's family. However, fate had no mercy. It started snowing heavily that night. When Feeney arrived home, he discovered that his sister-in-law's family had frozen to death. They never had the chance to live the life they longed for. Unstoppable fury ignited in Feeney's eyes. He was determined to make everyone who harmed his family pay a painful price before fleeing to the United States. He took hold of the pig from his home and marched straight to Fitzgibbon's house. When Fitzgibbon returned home and saw Feeney waiting for him, he was almost scared out of his wits. He hastily explained to Feeney that he was also forced into his actions. However, he suddenly opened a cabinet and pulled out a hunting rifle, aiming it at Feeney. It turned out that Feeney had tampered with the gun beforehand. Feeney took out a knife, then abruptly stood up and ended Fitzgibbon's life with a single strike. On the other side, upon learning about Feeney's massacre at the police station, the higher authorities immediately dispatched individuals to apprehend Feeney. One of them was the young Pope, and the other was Feeney's former comrade, Hannah. They set off immediately and soon arrived at Feeney's village. Just as they entered the village, they were confronted with a shocking sight. Hannah entered Fitzgibbon's house and discovered a body with a pig's head and a human body. The young Pope was horrified by this scene. After investigation, they realized that the motive behind the killings was not robbery. Hannah thought of Feeney, who was being pursued, and went to Feeney's house, where they found Fitzgibbon's severed head. Their guide informed them that Fitzgibbon, in collaboration with Lord Kilmacle, had forcibly demolished Feeney's house, resulting in the tragic death of Feeney's family. This must have been Feeney's act of revenge. On the other side, Feeney arrived at the town's courthouse and witnessed the hanging of his brother by the judge. The judge casually executed an innocent villager, fueling Feeney's uncontrollable rage. He immediately infiltrated the judge's room and hanged him outside the courthouse walls. Subsequently, Feeney made his way to Lord Kilmacle's mansion, eliminating all the guards. However, he couldn't find Lord Kilmacle there. Thus, he confronted Lord Kilmacle's steward and interrogated him about Lord Kilmacle's whereabouts. The steward initially tried to resist, even using Lord Kilmacle as a threat against Feeney. But Feeney swiftly responded with a slap.
They have money.
Having obtained the information he needed, Feeney didn't show any mercy and ended the steward's life with a single strike of his knife. Just as Feeney was about to leave, Pope and his companions arrived at the scene. Feeney raised his gun and shot Pope's horse, causing Pope to panic. Hannah attempted to launch a surprise attack but was kicked by Feeney, falling to the ground. Subsequently, Feeney rode off on a horse from the granary. However, he didn't kill his former comrade, a young soldier who aimed his gun at Feeney but was too intimidated by Feeney's imposing presence to pull the trigger. Seizing the opportunity, Feeney escaped. Enraged, Pope realized Feeney's next target and set off through the night to Lord Kilmakel's house in the city, intending to set a trap and wait for Feeney to fall into it before they could arrive. Feeney appeared before Hannah under the cover of night. He took Hannah's gun and shared with her everything he had endured. Fearlessly, Feeney had fought on British battlefields, but he had been forced into persecution and witnessed the destruction of his family. That's why he was determined to avenge his loved ones. He warned Hannah that if she continued to obstruct him, he would show no mercy next time they crossed paths. After speaking, Feeney swiftly vanished into the night. When they finally found Lord Kilmakel, he didn't consider Feeney to be a threat at all. He believed his house was like a fortress and boasted a large number of police guards. However, persuaded by Pope, Lord Kilmakel agreed to have them provide close protection. On the carriage, Lord Kilmakel revealed the reason behind the forced demolitions. The more farmers there were in the town, the more taxes he had to pay. So, he had the roofs of the farmers' houses removed, leaving them homeless and reducing the tax burden significantly. Hannah was greatly shocked upon hearing this. It was unbelievable that the lives of ordinary people were disregarded for the sake of reducing taxes. Upon returning to Lord Kilmakel's house, everyone gathered around the fire, drinking and chatting, completely detached from the cold world outside. At that moment, Feeney quietly infiltrated the house. As he entered the room, intending to assassinate Lord Kilmakel, he lifted the covers only to realize he had fallen into a trap. Feeney knocked down Pope using the gun's barrel and prepared to kill him. However, Hannah, who had been hiding in the corner, intervened without firing her gun. Just then, Lord Kilmakel arrived. With a single glance from Hannah, Feeney understood. He once again struck Pope to the ground, then turned and left, taking Lord Kilmakel captive as well. As the other guards rushed over, Feeney had already taken Lord Kilmakel and made his escape. The next day, Hannah was sentenced to death by Pope for treason. However, just as the execution was about to take place, gunshots rang out, followed by the sound of a soldier falling. It was Feeney returning once again. Pope immediately called for reinforcements. In the midst of this, a person on horseback stormed into the estate. Pope ordered his men to shoot the intruder, believing it to be Feeney. But when they turned the person over, they discovered it was actually Lord Kilmakel. At the same time, Feeney burst in, gun in hand, and swiftly took down two guards. Using the butt of his gun, he knocked down another and drew his hunting knife to deliver a fatal blow. Feeney then made his way to the second floor. Reloading his gun, he shot down the guard at the entrance, and the homeless people outside immediately rushed in, seizing the opportunity to plunder the food within the estate. Just as Pope spotted Feeney's location, he was shot in the shoulder by Feeney. Feeney continued to reload his gun, but suddenly, a police officer burst in and shot Feeney in return. Subsequently, Feeney engaged in a struggle with the police officer, and during the fight, they both fell into the nearby stable. Feeney seized the moment and delivered a punch, swiftly strangling the police officer until he stopped breathing. However, Feeney was heavily wounded by this point. Just as two more police officers rushed in and discovered him, Hannah suddenly appeared and successfully saved Feeney. The two of them mounted horses and prepared to escape. Unexpectedly, Pope launched a surprise attack. Hannah attempted to retaliate, but her gun misfired. Unable to do anything, she temporarily spared Pope and fled with the injured Feeney on horseback. However, they didn't get far before the severely wounded Feeney succumbed to his injuries and fell to the ground. He urged Hannah not to fight against those people anymore but to start a new life in America. With his dying breath, Feeney's voice faded away. The next day, Hannah closely followed Pope, who was injured but preparing to return to England. It seemed as though she was ready to seek revenge for Feeney at any moment, but when they reached a fork in the road, Hannah hesitated. The other path led to America, where she could start a new life. Should she continue her fight against the forces of evil or choose to let go and begin her own fresh start in America? For those of you watching, what do you think she should do? Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments. As a film lover, I look forward to meeting you in the next movie.